Earlier this evening, Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron backed Theresa May and said there is no plausible explanation but Russian state involvement for the attack on a former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter, Yulia, in Salisbury. The trio were pictured together smiling in a united front before their trilateral meeting this evening. Donald Tusk also said EU leaders agree with Britain that it is highly likely Russia was responsible for the attack. Prime Minister Theresa May arrived in Brussels earlier today, where she is expected to make a few words on the agreed transition deal later this evening. At this week's summit, the 27 Brussels leaders are expected to adopt a negotiating mandate for the future trading relationship with Britain and sign off on a 2-year transition, starting at the end of March next year, but the leaders will meet without the PM on Friday, where they are expected to give the green light to a 2-year transition period following the progress made by negotiators over the weekend. Get EU Summit Live. Brexit is set to dominate the Brussels meeting. Donald Tusk refused to answer questions on the Russian spy attack during a press conference today. The first session was a discussion trade, with US President Donald Trump's steel tariffs high on the agenda. Additional reporting by Maria Ortega and Monica Pallenberg. Please follow express.co.uk below for live updates on the EU summit throughout the day. 9:05 p.m. Update: Theresa May speaks at EU Council meeting and hails new dynamic in push for Brexit deal. She said, "We have the chance now to create a new dynamic in the talks and work together to find workable solutions in Northern Ireland on our future security cooperation and in order to ensure the future prosperity of all our people. This is an opportunity it is our duty to take and to enter into with energy and ambition." She also reiterated her personal commitment to the draft blueprint for a deal agreed by the two sides last December. 8 p.m. Update: lights went off during the meeting. The lights went out during Mrs. May, Ms. Merkel and Mr. Macron's meeting, and Emmanuel Macron sang to lighten the mood. It seems someone leant on a switch, plunging the room into darkness, and out of the darkness came the voice of the French leader singing, "Happy Birthday." 7:40 p.m. Update: May, Merkel and Macron discuss Russia. Downing Street said Mrs. May provided the two leaders with a detailed update on the investigation into the reckless use of a military nerve agent of a type produced by Russia on the streets of Salisbury, adding, "The UK, Germany and France reaffirmed that there is no plausible explanation other than that the Russian state was responsible." The leaders agreed on the importance of sending a strong European message in response to Russia's actions and agreed to remain in close contact.
In coming days, Juncker and Tusk refused to talk about Russia is responsible for.
Update: Belgium wants more details from the US. Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel wants more details on the exemptions to US tariffs. He said, "As far as I know, there is one point that's important and that we'll have to look at carefully when things are presented. While the prospect of exemptions is open, the question is whether these exemptions are linked to conditions and if so, to what conditions." 6:20 p.m. Update: leaders questioned on Salisbury attack. Both Mr. Tusk and Mr. Juncker dodged a question asking if they agree with the British government's conclusion that Russia should be considered a strategic enemy of the EU. Donald Tusk responded, "We will discuss the reaction to Salisbury attack during the working dinner and can give a more precise answer later." 6:18 p.m. Update: Jean-Claude Juncker's opening remarks. Mr. Juncker says he woke up this morning thinking about the victims of the Brussels terror attack 2 years ago, and those who still live with it. He says it is important to improve digital skills among EU citizens. 6:11 p.m. Update: Donald Tusk's opening remarks. We need to avoid protections at a global level. Risk to jobs. Dialogue with US is key. Prepare single market for future. Leaders ask EC to present an implementation report on strategies by December. Recent developments on Facebook. Citizens' privacy and data must be protected. 5:30 p.m. Update: no comments on UK spy attack. Several counter-IAs are planning Miasri to respond to the attack on a former Russian spy in the UK, but an announcement is not expected at the summit, a French source told Reuters. 4:55 p.m. Update: Laura Thompson, Deputy Director General of the International Organization for Migration, emphasizes the Importance of integrations. Thompson echoes Mr. Avramopoulos's sentiments on integration. She says integration and social cohesion are extremely important. She said, there are very clear barriers that migrants face in the presence of integration, linguistic, legal and administrative. She said it requires work and dedication at a local, regional and national level. It is also very important for local authorities, and the local community, to welcome migrants and ensure there are services in place for diverse populations. The media doesn't tell the positive stories of the benefits migrants bring to the host nations, and we need to remember, and be aware, of the good they bring. 4:45 p.m. update. Dimitris Avramopoulos, member of the EC in charge of migration, home affairs and citizenship, called for further EU integration. Mr. Avramopoulos has called for a radical rethinking about how we approach the question of integration. He says integration should become a centralized, mainstreamed and long-term priority for the entire European Union. 4:23 p.m. update. Trump keeps the EU waiting. EU officials are reportedly waiting to discuss a trade deal with the US until Trump tweets about it. There are concerns he will say or tweet something different to what the EU has announced. It has also been speculated that the US president is delaying posting his tweet to heighten suspense. 3:27 p.m. update. Mr. Tajani refuses to congratulate Vladimir Putin for asked if DHELL send a congratulatory letter. He simply said no. 3:25 p.m. update. Tajani broaches Facebookgate. Speaking about the Facebook data issue, he said he and EU national leaders have discussed it, and he invites Mark Zuckerberg to testify before the European Parliament. He said, it would be a big mistake to decide no debate with the European Parliament. We are the most important market. We are a regulator, he said. If Facebook data was used to influence people during the EU referendum or US election, we need to know. EBS Live EU Summit Live. The Irish PM has suggested the UK may not need a backstop solution. 3.15 update. Antonio Tajani, President of the European Parliament, tells EU leaders to act on immigration. He is calling for the EU to propose a Marshall Plan for Africa to address the issue at source. The President called on the Council to act on plans for asylum reform, more resources for Frontex, more reception centres, as well as more investment in Tunisia, Morocco, Niger, Mali, Chad and Libya to improve border controls and combat people traffickers. 2:38 p.m. update. Italian PM Paolo Gentiloni has hailed positive progress in Brexit talks. He said, I think that tomorrow's meeting will be a step forward because we consider that the agreement is very positive and, in particular regarding the aspects that Italy had strongly requested, which primarily concern our fellow citizens and EU citizens living in the UK. 2:24 p.m. update. Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz has condemned Russia over the Salisbury attack. He said, we condemn the poison attack and stand with GB in solidarity, and therefore I'm awaiting May informing us and sharing the information she has so far. 2:16 p.m. update. Irish PM Leo Varadkar has suggested the UK may not need a backstop solution in Brexit. Ireland's leader said he would be speaking to Theresa May today, saying, we are going from phase 2 to 3. That's welcoming. We've agreed the terms of transition, and when it comes to jobs, business and farming, transition is agreed. Nothing will change till 2021, and that's very important for us. The British side and others said they would seek some changes, but they will now be duty bound by laws they would have no input to. He said the Irish protocol was very happy British government has changed position and there is a backstop in what was agreed. Mr. Varadkar added, everyone shares the objective to avoid a hard border. An alternative solution would bring the UK closer to the Union and may mean we don't need a backstop. The Irish PM also sent a warning to the EU, saying the bloc would have to support Ireland because its future is at stake, adding, we have absolute unconditional support that there can be no agreement unless a hard border is avoided. There's a real understanding across EU that the EU demonstrates it supports a small member state staying, even if that means not being able to support a large member state leaving. It's not just about Ireland. The EU knows this is a test on whether it is worth being in EU. He said they would stand with UK on the nerve agent attack. What occurred in Salisbury was loathsome. 2:11 p.m. update. Angela Merkel says she hopes progress can be made in Brexit talks. The German Chancellor said, then we will of course also talk about Great Britain exiting and hopefully make some progress tomorrow. When talking about future relationship between EU and G-flat and also pass the corresponding guidelines, I believe that Barnier and Juncker have done excellent work here. She also expressed solidarity to Theresa May over the Salisbury nerve agent attack. Mrs. Merkel added, of course we will also address the terrible incident in Salisbury. And I have already expressed our solidarity to Theresa May and our support. It is good that GB has also handed the substances, the chemical weapons to the chemical weapons authorities where things can be investigated. 2:09 p.m. update. Greek PM Alexis Tsipras has urged caution in response to the Salisbury attack. He said, I think that we need to use all diplomatic tools that we have at our disposal. I think we will have to express our solidarity to the UK, the British people, but at the same time we need to investigate, but I think that we have to be very responsible on that issue. EBS Live EU Summit Live. Jean-Claude Juncker played down fears of a trade war with the US. 1:45 p.m. update. Jean-Claude Juncker has played down fears of a trade war between the US and EU. The EU boss said the bloc had made it clear, we don't not want a trade war. As he delivered his keynote speech, he said, we will wait for the statement of the American president and we will not think about the trade question this afternoon, but this evening during dinner, we, as the Commission, have made it clear that we do not want a trade war. Trade wars don't benefit anyone, but we are able and ready to take adequate countermeasures. We will see if this will be necessary. I don't see the transatlantic relationship being undone. We have to continue to work with the Americans in a friendly way. 1:41 p.m. Udpate. French President Emmanuel Macron is pushing for his plans to reform the EU. He told reporters, first of all, a word of condolence this day 2 years after the Brussels attack. We wear this symbol of solidarity. This council will discuss many topics: trade, market, strategic issues, Eurozone. We need to build a united Europe that defends its own interests. We will also hear good proposals on taxation. We will also talk about Turkey and Africa. We must take into consideration Turkey's security criteria, but respecting other aspects as well. We will make sure there is dialogue with Turkey. EBS Live EU Summit Live. Macron is pushing for EU reform. 1:37 p.m. update. Theresa May has said she is looking forward to getting on with Brexit talks as she arrived in Brussels. The PM told reporters, I am looking forward to talking about Brexit. She said, considerable progress had been made which would bring certainty to businesses and people, and I look forward to moving on swiftly to talk about the future partnership that we want to build together. The PM said, I will also of course be talking about Brexit. I'm looking forward to talking about Brexit. We've made considerable progress through the agreement of the implementation period. I look forward to the European Council endorsing that agreement and moving on swiftly to talking about the future partnership that we all want to build together. On Russia, Mrs. May blasted the attack as brazen and reckless, as she accused the Kremlin of attempted murder. She said the nerve agent attack showed Russian aggression against European neighbors. Mid-speech, Mrs. May was also stunned when Jean-Claude Juncker brazenly interrupted her to say hello. 1:24 p.m. update. EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini has vowed to push ahead with plans for the UK's future relationship. She said, we will begin thinking about the future, which also includes the future relationship on foreign policy and defence. Responding to the Salisbury attack, she said, the strongest political sign we can give is unity. 1:03 p.m. update. Lithuania's president has expressed support for the UK against Russia. Dalia Grybauskaite said she chose not to congratulate Putin, especially after the UK attack on European territory. She said following the attack there is no space for diplomacy. Grybauskaite said, for me it was clear there is no way she was going to congratulate Putin, adding, we fully support the UK. 12:50 p.m. update. Estonia is fully behind our friend, the UK, against Russia. Estonian PM Jüri Ratas told reporters, we are shocked by the attack in Salisbury. Estonia fully condemns the attack and stands with our friend and full ally United Kingdom. 12:41 p.m. update. The Romanian president has congratulated Putin. Klaus Iohannis said, "I would like to assure you that I remain confident about the benefits of developing the relations between our states on a pragmatic and predictable basis, through constructive dialogue and in accordance with the principles and norms of international law." Getty EU Summit Live. Juncker has pledged his commitment to the Baltics. 12:31 p.m. Update. Angela Merkel made no comment when arriving in Brussels ahead of the EU summit. 11:58 a.m. Update. Luxembourg's PM Xavier Bettel has expressed his support for the UK against Russia. He told reporters EU leaders must listen to Theresa May over the issue before they make a decision. Bettel said, "We should show that there is solidarity." Quizzed over whether EU members should also expel Russian diplomats, he said, "It's a national decision. It is not the place in Brussels for 27 or 28 countries to decide. The UK decided without asking the 27 other colleagues what their position would be, but first I will listen before I take a decision." On Brexit, the Luxembourg leader said, "We're moving in the right direction," adding the EU were beginning to understand the UK position. He also said was optimistic the EU would not be entering a trade war with the US over Trump's tariffs. Bettel said, "As I said, we are now waiting for an answer from Mr. Trump, and I would be very happy if we didn't end up with a lose-lose situation. I am convinced that there will be good news today, otherwise Mr. Juncker and Mr. Tusk will have to address this with the American president on the presidential level." 11:32 a.m. Update. The EU has reinforced its commitments to the Baltic region. Juncker met with the Lithuanian president and prime ministers of Latvia, Poland and Estonia, where he pledged to end the electricity isolation of the Baltics. 11:26 a.m. Update. EU Council President has received Bulgarian PM Boyko Borisov. EBS Live. EU Summit Live. Donald Tusk receives the Bulgarian PM. 11:19 a.m. Update. Millionaire businessman Michael Bloomberg has described Brexit as the dumbest thing a country has ever done. During a keynote speech at the European Council Summit in Brussels, he said, "When I was in London a few months ago, I said Brexit was the dumbest thing any country had ever done, but I added, then we trumped it." The audience burst into laughter and applause, with Mr. Bloomberg even struggling to avoid laughing at his own quip. EBS Live. EU Summit Live. Dalia Grybauskaite gives the thumbs up. 10:55 a.m. Update. Lithuania appears to be supporting the UK's tough stance against Russia. President Dalia Grybauskaite gave the thumbs up when she was asked if she would be supporting Theresa May's firm stance against Moscow in response to the nerve agent attack against former Russian spy Sergei Skripal. EBS Live. EU Summit Live. Juncker greets leaders of Lithuania, Poland, Estonia. 10:22 a.m. Juncker appears to blame German Chancellor Angela Merkel for his letter of congratulations to Putin. The EU chief told reporters, "I wrote the same letter than Mrs. Merkel," asked Mrs. Merkel if it was the right thing to do, as he greeted the Lithuanian president and prime ministers of Latvia, Poland and Estonia. Juncker has faced criticism over his letter in Brussels, with a liberal group in the European Parliament saying, "We do not think that Putin's liberal policies and election strategies deserve congratulations." A second, conservative faction called the letter nauseating. EPA EU Summit Live. Brussels have been reflecting on the terror attack in March 2016. 10:14 a.m. Brussels have been reflecting on the terror attack that killed 32 people on March 22, 2016. Brussels PM Charles Michel laid a wreath in memory of the victims. 10:06 a.m. Donald Tusk has held a meeting with Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven and met with the European Council President ahead of the EU Leaders Summit. Reuters. EU Summit Live. Swedish PM Stefan Löfven meets Donald Tusk. 9:31 a.m. Desperate. Emmanuel Macron meets with Dutch PM Mark Rutte. The French president is on a mission to gather support for his far-reaching EU reforms. He met Mr. Rutte at The Hague last night ahead of the EU summit. 9:21 a.m. EU members are not entirely united over its stance against Russia. Greece and Hungary are reportedly reluctant to support the UK to blame Russia entirely for the nerve agent attack against Sergei Skripal on British soil. 9:13 a.m. Juncker faces a tough crowd. After his congratulatory message to Putin, the EU boss raised eyebrows when he wished the Russian president, every success. following his presidential victory, with some calling his message nauseating and an insult, EU Council President Donald Tusk told reporters. After the Salisbury attack, I'm not in the mood to celebrate President Putin's reappointment, while Guy Verhofstadt tweeted, "This is no time for congratulations." 9:09 a.m. update. PM Theresa May is expected to toe a tough line against Russia during her appearance in Brussels. The Tory leader is expected to say, "The challenge from Russia is one that will endure for years to come. As a European democracy, the UK will stand shoulder to shoulder with the EU and with NATO to face these threats together," as she rallies on EU members to unite. 9:07 a.m. update. May is flying into Brussels for the end of the EU summit. The PM is expected to make a few words at the end of the working dinner, a UK official told politics news site, politico.co.uk. "You can expect the PM to welcome the progress that's been made. I wouldn't expect it to be a big long